We were very fortunate in Massachusetts to have a very comprehensive Education Reform Act passed into law, which set the stage for everything. And it was higher standards for students, higher standards for educators, and higher standards for schools and school districts. And I'm proud to say that after a 8-year period, we leaped to the front of the country in fourth grade reading, fourth grade math, eighth grade reading, and eighth grade math on NAEP, which has never been done before, and we're still there. So obviously, we had a lot of success. And the law included a lot of participation by various groups. And so our curriculum frameworks included a lot of teachers, and our teachers were on even our assessments committees, picking questions, and on the bias committees and so forth. But there were a couple of things that were occurring as we were rolling out our reform. One was that it was clear the key role that principals were playing. As we saw particular schools making great progress, Kensington Avenue School in Springfield, the University Park School in Worcester, Brockton High School, the largest school in Massachusetts, principal played a key role. So that got me to thinking about the role of principals. And also, while the curriculum frameworks and our standards and the assessment were bringing together curriculum and instruction, we really needed a common language, a common approach to the way in which we organized education reform. And so that led me to think about, is there something we can do for leaders, in particular for principals? When you look across the state, obviously our urban areas and some, we're not real rural, but we have some very small districts. That's where the majority of our low-performing students were, the greatest challenges, family and income and otherwise, LEP, even students with disabilities. So there's a clear difference. On the other hand, I actually wanted something across the state, and while I wanted the principals at the core, I also wanted superintendents and others to be brought in. So it was a unique approach that I didn't think I could find, where we would provide training for principals that would also affect a coordination across districts. Ironically, NISL was brought to my attention by my staff. They knew the kinds of things I had been talking about because I knew leadership was such a key. And as even current Secretary of Education Arnie Duncan talks about, you go into a great school, invariably you find a great leader. So they understood what I was looking for, and they found this program. Over time, it became a very cost-effective model because our own people were doing most of the teaching, so it was terrific. And most importantly, it was a common language and a common approach across the state, and this was a key for us. We started really in the urban areas. We went to the hardest places. We did all the principals in Boston and Worcester, Springfield, and Lawrence, Holyoke, et cetera. But we certainly didn't have enough to do the entire state. And ironically enough, districts stepped forward with their own money and said, we want to be part of this. And so it really became statewide in the real sense of the word. We didn't get to every principal, but we were, in fact, they're still running the program even today in 2015. And because of money and everything else, pretty modest program, and it's replacement principals and so forth. But, you know, we trained well over 1,300 as time went on, and that's a lot of principals in Massachusetts. There were a couple of side effects besides the work, the things that they learned, the content, the focus on student achievement, the focus on instruction and improved student achievement. I went to Holyoke, one of our poorest districts, and two principals that had grown up together, had gone through school together, were principals for over 10 years. And they said they never talked, except if they saw each other once a year at the superintendent's orientation. Because of NISL, they talked every day. So that was a remarkable impact. But then the question was, is it having an impact on students? And it's pretty hard to know whether a leadership program would have an effect on student achievement. But in fact, NISL commissioned with a university to do a study. And they looked at schools that had NISL-trained principals and similar schools that had non-NISL-trained principals. And in fact, improvement of student achievement was significant, statistically significant. There were a number of other advantages. I mentioned the common language, and what happened is people across districts started to realize and started to focus on some of the case studies and other things that people had talked about. So focus on instruction in the classroom became common. It became something people talked about, people understood. They realized that we wanted kids to be active, not just sitting there as sponges and lecturers and so forth and so on. And principals needed to be instructional strategic leaders. And so it was a real learning experience. And we even involved some teacher leaders after a while, not just principals, people sometimes they were people that wanted to be principals, but we had people who said, look, I don't really want to be a principal. I'm very happy being a teacher, but I would like to have the content knowledge that is being proposed. So it was great to see adults in a true learning experience, and that spills over. There's a spirit about it. It's an incentive to have principals feel like they're learners. It really helps with teachers, and they learned a lot of techniques to provide schools where people acted in teams, worked as partners. There was an awful lot of side effects to NISL.